There's a lot of information out there about raw diets. Many arguments in support of feeding a raw diet and many arguments against feeding a raw diet. So for the common dog owner that's looking for information and just trying to figure out the difference between fact and opinion when it comes to raw diet, just trying to figure out what's best to put in their own dog's food bowl, it can be very confusing and misleading. So with the help of a handful of veterinary nutrition experts, I've put together some information to help you weed through what's fact and what's opinion when it comes to raw diets. Now, the reality is there are consequences to feeding raw and there are benefits to feeding raw, and we're going to cover both. To help make this information a little more digestible, I went ahead and put it in question and answer format based on some of the common questions that I've gotten from my own clients about raw diet. I want to send a special shout out and thank you to Dr. Leslie Hancock-Monroe for helping me weed through and answer some of these questions. Now, I do put a lot of research and effort into these videos, and I put a good bit into this one as well. So if you do like this video, please be sure to let me know and hit that like button. It really helps the YouTube algorithm in getting it in front of people that will also find value in it. You can hit the subscribe and the bell notification to receive more content just like it. Without any further ado, let's get right into raw. Is a raw diet good for my dog? This is a hot button topic that everyone seems to have an opinion on. And truth be told, there are benefits to raw diet and there are consequences to raw diet. So I want to address some of the more popular myths and the more popular truths that people have heard. The most common argument that I hear for raw diet is that people believe that it is the most natural form of a diet that you can feed. Now, natural means existing in or caused by nature, not made or caused by humankind. Domesticated dogs themselves are not even naturally occurring organisms as it is, so I do find a little bit of irony in this whole natural conversation. The confusion comes in when people mix up the digestive systems of dogs and wolves when it comes to what's natural, and domesticated dogs are not wolves. Many people think that dogs actually evolved from wolves, but more recent research actually points to the fact that dogs and wolves both evolved or descended from a common ancestor. Wolves are also carnivores, whereas dogs are omnivores. And what that means is that domesticated dogs can actually derive some of their nutritional content, some of their energy resource, from plant material as well as animal flesh. Dogs have developed over thousands of years the ability, unlike wolves, the enhanced ability to digest carbohydrates. So it's important to remember that dogs and wolves, or really more so what's natural for domesticated dogs, is not natural for wolves. Now, when it comes to labeling, the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, also known as the FDA, has not yet defined natural in relation to pet food labeling. Instead, it relies on the federal requirement that labeling must not be false or misleading. But a feed or feed ingredient can contain trace amounts of chemically synthetic materials and still be considered natural on a label. Another argument that I hear is that raw diet is a healthier diet than a kibble diet. And what you should know is that all diets can vary widely. Kibble diets vary from diet to diet, and so do raw diets. So it really depends on what diet you're comparing them to. Making a generalized statement about raw diet or kibble diet just isn't accurate. What's healthy for a dog is really dependent upon the quality of ingredients that go into a diet, how that diet is handled, how it's processed, and how it's delivered to the digestive system of the dog. Pet food recalls happen with both raw diet and with kibble diets, but it should be notated that there is a higher recall rate for raw diets than there is kibble based on the pathogenic contamination levels. So can a kibble diet be healthier than a raw diet? Yes. But can a raw diet be healthier than a kibble diet? Yes. What really matters, again, is the ingredients, the preparation, and how that's delivered to the dog's digestive system. So it's important to compare diet to diet based on those facts, not whether the diet in general is raw or kibble. There is no scientific evidence to actually support that a well-balanced raw diet is any better than a well-balanced kibble diet. Is a raw food diet more digestible than a kibble diet? Yes and no. I know you really want a simple answer to this question, but unfortunately, it's a little bit more complex than that. It completely depends if all of the ingredients in a raw diet are actually raw or if some of them are actually cooked too. Different nutrients are available with more ease and more digestibility as to whether they are fully raw or fully cooked. I'll explain. So if the fat and the protein are raw, they are slightly more digestible in that form, in that raw form, than they are in a processed kibble form. slightly more digestible. Now, what is not more digestible in raw form are starches, carbohydrates, additives in raw diet to give that full nutritional balance. Those things have to be cooked or even partially cooked to be nutritionally available to the dog. So in a completely raw diet, if your grains, if they're whole grains or their starches are not at least somewhat cooked, those nutrients aren't available to the dog. So long story short, a raw diet, if it's raw fat and raw protein, is slightly more digestible in raw form. And it's slightly more digestible only if in that raw diet it's not completely raw and your starches or your grains have been partially cooked. Can handling and feeding my dog a raw diet make me sick? Yes, it can. Salmonella, Listeria, and E. coli are 3 common pathogens found in raw food diets that are not only transmittable to your pet and can not only make your pet sick, but can also make you sick as well. You can get sick from so much as just one doggy kiss on the face from a dog that eats a raw food diet. That's how easily transmittable it is. So if you ever have that gastrointestinal upset to where you're confused about what landed you on the porcelain throne for 24 hours straight, that might be the culprit. Now, these pathogens, and remember, pathogens are just organisms or viruses that can cause disease. These pathogens are most concerning in people who are immune compromised, elderly people, infants, pregnant women, but they can really make anyone sick. And it only takes a tiny amount to transfer to you to make you sick, a microscopic amount in fact, so you don't even need to see it to get sick and get infected by them. It's also a common misconception that you can freeze raw food or freeze dry it and that will kill these pathogens and make it safe. That unfortunately is not correct. Most of the pathogens that are found in raw diet can survive freezing. The only way to kill them is to cook it, just like your food. There are a couple of different ways that people feed raw diet. One is the homemade version of raw diets and the other is purchased, whether through a pet store or online. Now, oftentimes people equate homemade with healthier because as humans, if we cook food at home, oftentimes it's healthier than the choices that we make for ourselves when we eat out. In the case of raw diet, homemade is not necessarily healthier. Homemade diets are very complex and require the assistance of a nutrition professional specifically. Reason being, often homemade diets have a lot of deficiencies of nutrients that people don't realize their dogs need to sustain a healthy life. Minerals such as calcium. Deficiencies can cause immune compromisation to where it opens the door for pathogens and illnesses that otherwise wouldn't be there enter the system. So it compromises your animal not to have these ingredients that they so necessarily need for their diets. Some people that Google diets to try to remedy these deficiencies might add things like chicken and turkey necks. But unfortunately, playing with diets can create even more problems than you anticipate because adding things like chicken and turkey necks to make up for some of the missing nutrients in a homemade diet can lead to things like thyroid toxicities. Fat content tends to be much higher in raw homemade diets as well. And on the outside, that might look great. Your dog might all of a sudden have a shinier, healthier looking coat. But simultaneously, on the inside, you're upsetting the gastrointestinal system and potentially creating problems like pancreatitis for your dog. I often get asked if I feed my own dogs a raw diet. And no, I don't. There is no scientific evidence or research to support a well-balanced raw diet being any more nutritional or healthy for my dog than a well-balanced kibble diet. Now, a lot of people often turn to raw diets because their dogs have allergies, often severe allergies, and that's one of the ways that they can kind of try to tackle that problem. I have a dog with allergies at home. Some of you may know Blue Ivy from some of my other videos, and there was a period of time where we had to go through buying some raw ingredients to feed her to try to figure out what was going on and what specifically she was allergic to. However, when I brought those raw ingredients home, I cooked them for her. So rendering it no longer a raw diet, it's now a cooked diet with fresh ingredients. The reason that I did this is because I didn't want to expose her to potential pathogens. But also, more importantly, the reason that I did this is because when you're addressing allergies, it has absolutely nothing to do with the diet being cooked or not cooked. So basically raw versus cooked. That has nothing to do with addressing allergies. What you're more so addressing with some of these specific formulated diets is the nutritional content, the limited ingredients that come in some of these diets. So for allergies, it's a great rule of thumb that if you do turn to a raw diet, that it's okay to render it not raw anymore and to go ahead and cook it. Now, one of the things that I hear people say is they don't want to cook their raw diet because it changes the nutritional content and makes it less healthy for the dog. That's not true. Yes, it does break down the proteins some when you cook food, just like any food that you cook and consume as well, but it's very, very minimal. In fact, it's much better to cook your food, your raw ingredients, when you get them and store them in a cooked state. It holds on to that nutritional content much better than it does if you store the food for a longer period of time and then cook it or then feed it in a raw state. Storing your raw food, even in the freezer or even in the refrigerator for an extended period of time, allows time for pathogens to grow, and the nutrients actually break down faster being stored fresh than it does if you store it cooked. Now, a lot of research and effort goes into these videos, so if you do like this video, please let me know by hitting that like button. It really helps the YouTube algorithm in getting it in front of people that find this information valuable. You can hit the subscribe bell notification to receive more videos just like it.